December 21st, 1945. Early evening. A military hospital in Heidelberg feels unnaturally quiet. The war is over, but death has not left the building. Doctors move slower now. There are no shouted commands, no rushing footsteps. Everyone already knows what is coming. On a narrow hospital bed lies George S. Patton, a man whose name once echoed across battlefields from North Africa to Germany. For 20 days, his body has remained motionless, his mind fully awake, locked inside a frame that no longer answers him. He has endured pain without complaint, aware that the war spared him only to trap him here. A single blood clot begins its silent journey. It moves through his damaged body, reaches his heart, and ends everything in seconds. No explosion, no enemy fire, no last stand. The general who survived artillery barrages and sniper bullets dies quietly, far from the front lines he mastered. He is 60 years old. For a moment, history pauses. This is not how legends are supposed to end. Patton was the man who drove armies forward when others hesitated, who shouted, cursed, and demanded victory at any cost. Europe feared him. His own superiors struggled to control him. Yet now, his life ends without witnesses, without ceremony, without the roar of engines or guns. Only machines falling silent. The most aggressive commander of the American army is gone, not in glory, but in stillness.
The accident that destroyed George Patton's body was painfully ordinary. December 9th, 1945, Germany. A routine drive near Mannheim. No escorts, no combat alert. The war had ended weeks earlier, and danger no longer felt necessary. Patton sat in the back seat of his 1938 Cadillac, relaxed, talking casually. Ahead of them, a heavy military truck suddenly slowed at an intersection. The driver braked, but there was not enough distance. The collision was mild. Metal bent, glass cracked. Nothing dramatic. The driver stepped out uninjured. The officer beside Patton suffered only minor pain. But Patton was thrown forward violently. His head snapped. His neck absorbed the force. In a single second, his spine shattered. The most feared general in Europe became helpless. Patton understood immediately. There was no panic, no denial. He tested his fingers. Nothing moved. He turned his head slightly and spoke with calm clarity, as if reporting battlefield conditions. "I believe I am paralyzed." Those words carried more weight than any speech he ever gave. Doctors acted quickly. He was stabilized and rushed to the hospital. Specialists were flown in from Britain and the United States. Treatments were attempted. Hope was discussed publicly, but privately, reality was brutal. His wife, Beatrice, crossed the Atlantic to be at his side. The press followed every update. Soldiers prayed. But the body that had survived 2 world wars could not recover from this quiet, senseless injury.
By December 21, the end was inevitable. George Patton's room filled with the quiet hum of machines, each one a fragile bridge between life and death. Beatrice sat nearby, holding his hand, trying to anchor him with her presence, her whispers barely audible over the monitors. Outside, winter descended on Heidelberg, frost creeping across the streets and snow silencing the world. But inside, time felt heavier. Each tick of the clock was a hammer on the hearts of those who loved him, who had witnessed his ferocity on battlefields where no man dared falter. Soldiers remembered his shouts, his orders, his impossible demands, and they now watched as he faced a battle he could not command. The doctors worked tirelessly, trying every method known to modern medicine. Specialists from around the world convened, bringing expertise and hope, yet even hope seemed powerless against the injury. Nurses whispered prayers, some quietly weeping, others stoic, used to the fragility of life in wartime, but unprepared for this. The hospital halls, usually busy with movement and urgency, were hushed, as though the building itself mourned. For 20 days, Patton had been trapped in a body that no longer obeyed him. And now, as evening fell, the final moments approached. Beatrice clung to a slim thread of hope, praying for a miracle that history had never prepared for. The world outside felt distant, almost unreal. Yet inside, Patton's presence was palpable, commanding even in stillness. Soldiers, officers, and friends who had faced bullets and bombs under his leadership came to the hospital, seeking a final connection. They did not speak loudly. No words could match the weight of what was happening. Memories filled the room like ghosts. They remembered his fiery speeches, the way his eyes seemed to burn with anticipation of victory, the crack of his whip-fast decisions that had saved lives and broken enemy lines. Now, all of that history converged on a single fragile figure, lying silent, fighting a war his body could no longer win. Beatrice, resolute, moved through the crowd, assuring soldiers and visitors alike. Her calm presence was a shield, but her eyes betrayed exhaustion and grief. Letters and messages arrived from around the world. Those who could not come in person sent their reverence, their sorrow, their gratitude. Each note became a thread in the fabric of Patton's legacy, weaving together the impact he had left on men, nations, and history itself. Inside the hospital room, the air seemed to thicken with anticipation, as though every soul present knew that the final chapter was about to be written. And then, as the clock ticked toward 6 in the evening, the machines recorded what no one wanted to face: the last breath of George S. Patton.
The following morning, a hush fell over Heidelberg. Word of Patton's passing traveled quickly, carried by soldiers and civilians alike. The streets, still frosted with winter's breath, were filled with a somber procession of those who had loved and feared him in equal measure. Men who had marched under his command, who had known the sharp edge of his expectations and the unrelenting pressure of his drive, now walked quietly, their thoughts heavy. The city itself seemed to mourn, as if acknowledging the loss of a man who had shaped history with both fury and brilliance. Inside his temporary quarters, preparations began for the first phase of his journey. His body, fragile yet commanding in his final repose, was carefully attended by the nurses and officers who had stood by him for decades. Beatrice oversaw every detail, ensuring that even in death, her husband's dignity, pride, and indomitable spirit remained intact. Soldiers lined up to pay their respects, some unable to hide tears, others silently offering their final salute. The air was thick with emotion, every whispered word and muffled step a tribute to a general whose presence had defined courage. Outside, winter winds howled, snow drifting across the cobblestones, as if echoing the turbulence of his life, a life spent in motion, in battle, in unyielding determination. By noon, the ceremonial train awaited, poised to carry Patton's body across the frozen German landscape to Luxembourg. Soldiers and officers, veterans of countless campaigns, stood at attention along the tracks. Each platform along the route would soon become a gathering of people paying tribute to the man whose life had been intertwined with victory and survival. Beatrice, steadfast and solemn, remained by his side, her presence a living bridge between the past battles and the final journey. She understood the significance of every detail: the arrangement of the casket, the precise alignment of flags, the disciplined coordination of soldiers in uniform. The train began to move slowly, each wheel turning as if echoing the heartbeat of history itself. Along the route, townspeople emerged from their homes, children on shoulders, veterans with medals glinting in the pale winter sun. Americans stationed in Europe lined the tracks, offering silent salutes. Each stop brought more people, each stop a reminder of the lives Patton had touched, the battles he had fought, and the legacy he left behind. Beatrice stepped onto each platform briefly, acknowledging the crowd, bowing her head, silently communicating the gratitude and sorrow that could not be spoken aloud. As the train rolled into the dusk, the snow swirled around it like a shroud, emphasizing the journey from war to memory, from life to legend, as the man who had commanded armies now commanded the respect of history itself.
As the train entered Luxembourg, the streets were lined with thousands of spectators. The air was crisp, the sky heavy with low winter clouds, as if the heavens themselves were mourning. Soldiers who had fought alongside Patton in the Ardennes, Sicily, and across Europe now stood silently, their eyes fixed on the moving casket. Civilians, many of whom had heard tales of his audacious charges and fearless leadership, removed their hats, bowed their heads, and whispered prayers. The sound of distant bells echoed through the city, mingling with the crunch of snow under countless boots. Beatrice remained composed, yet her eyes betrayed the depth of her grief and the weight of responsibility to honor her husband's final wishes. At every station along the route, small crowds gathered, some carrying flowers, others letters and mementos. Soldiers recited silent salutes, their disciplined posture breaking only when emotion overcame them. Children, unaware of the full significance, watched in wide-eyed awe as the train passed, the casket draped with the American flag, a symbol of courage and sacrifice. The journey was slow, deliberate in its ritual. Every movement, every gesture was a testament to a man whose life had been defined by action and audacity. The casket's journey through towns and fields mirrored Patton's own relentless march across battlefields, a path marked by strategy, bravery, and the indomitable will to lead. By late afternoon, the train reached its final approach to the designated resting place in Luxembourg. The city had prepared an unprecedented ceremonial procession. Thousands of soldiers, representing units from multiple Allied nations, stood at precise intervals, their faces solemn, their hands steady on rifles. Flags waved in the cold wind, each symbol carrying decades of shared struggle and victory. Beatrice, with unwavering grace, oversaw the ceremonial details, making sure her husband's journey ended exactly as he had envisioned. She understood that this was not merely a funeral. It was a declaration of loyalty, honor, and remembrance, binding the living to the legacy of a man who had demanded everything from those around him, yet gave them inspiration in return. The procession moved slowly, and every footstep seemed to echo with the memory of past battles. Local citizens, soldiers, and dignitaries filled the streets, offering their final tribute. Artillery fired salutes in measured cadence, each shot a thunderous reminder of Patton's impact on history. Veterans recalled his fiery speeches, his bold maneuvers, and his unyielding commitment to victory. The air was charged with emotion, a combination of sorrow, admiration, and awe. Here was a man who had faced the fury of war without flinching, whose decisions had changed the course of battles and inspired generations. Now, in death, he commanded a final, unifying moment, bringing together soldiers, civilians, and allies in a shared expression of respect and mourning.
The casket was finally moved into the Grand Church in Ham, Luxembourg, where Patton would rest among the soldiers who had fallen under his command. Inside, the air was heavy with incense and quiet reverence. The pews were filled with men who had served, fought, and survived because of Patton's leadership. Outside, a light snowfall began, blanketing the streets in silence and softening the distant echoes of artillery from the past. Beatrice took her place beside the altar, her eyes scanning the gathered crowd, recognizing veterans, friends, and representatives from allied nations. Each face told a story of survival, courage, and respect for a leader who had embodied both the brilliance and brutality of war. Ceremonial guards stood at attention around the casket, their rifles gleaming even in the dim light. The church organ played solemn chords, resonating deep in the hearts of all present. The service reflected not only the gravity of Patton's military achievements, but also his humanity, the determination, discipline, and unwavering spirit that had defined him. Every word spoken by the officiating chaplain emphasized duty, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bond between a commander and his soldiers. As Beatrice offered her silent prayers, veterans remembered the countless nights on cold, frozen ground, the relentless advance into enemy territory, and the man who had led them with both precision and ferocity. In death, Patton became not just a general, but a symbol of resilience, honor, and the enduring power of leadership.
As the ceremony concluded, Patton's casket was lowered into its final resting place. Soldiers stood in perfect alignment,
their salutes unwavering as the echoes of artillery salutes faded into the quiet winter air. Beatrice laid a single flower atop the casket, her hand trembling slightly, yet her expression resolute. Across the church and city, people stood silently, some wiping tears, others simply staring, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the moment. It was a pause in history, a recognition that one man's life, shaped by battles and brilliance, had come to its solemn close. The legacy of Patton was reflected not only in the meticulous ceremonies, but in the faces of those he had led. Soldiers recalled his voice commanding attention in the chaos of battle, his piercing eyes that demanded courage, and the unyielding expectation that they give their all. Civilians remembered a man who had faced tyranny with audacity and intellect, reshaping Europe with strategic brilliance. Beatrice stepped back, surveying the assembled crowd, understanding that her husband's final choice, to rest among the soldiers who had followed him through hell, cemented his eternal bond with the men he led. As the crowd slowly dispersed, the church doors closed, and the soft snowfall continued, it became clear that Patton's presence, in life and death, would endure. His spirit lingered in the frozen streets, in the memories of veterans, and in the hearts of those who understood the cost and honor of command. Even in the stillness of winter, his legend marched on, undaunted, unyielding, and forever intertwined with the sacrifices and triumphs of the soldiers who had trusted him with their lives. Patton's journey was complete, yet his story, his lessons, and his unwavering courage would echo through generations, inspiring awe, respect, and remembrance for eternity.